Welcome to the kingdom. I'm Chris, and this is Good Enough Gaming. Howdy folks, and welcome to the month in review for October. There hasn't been a whole lot of individual items of business, but the stuff that's happened in October has been very, very significant. So let's jump in, starting off as always with the submissions to the October painting competition. So first up, here we have the submissions for the individual category. So Mecha Ross here has given us one of the Goblin Reclaimers. Very striking, very solid colors, nice and bold. I like how he's able to get such a pop on the cloth there by having the reddish-brown background and then doing the orange highlights. Really makes that stick out. I am especially like the detail you can see on the gun there. Between the silver, the gold or brass, and then the stock. It looks like with just 3 or 4 layers or colors, he's given it a lot of depth and definition. Now, moving on to Master Voss here. A little bit more, I don't want to say attention, make it sound like the last one was lazy, but look, each leaf there has been painted a different color. Still nice and bold color schemes. The leather looks really good. Again, nice solid paint job. Now, NTJ has given us quite a diorama here. Of course, if anyone else is getting Dr. Strangelove vibes, let me know. But we got this goblin here riding on this gigantic bomb as it heads towards explosion. So it's really cool because they've taken an otherwise fairly regular goblin model and made it much more of a centerpiece here. Now, I don't know what exactly you'd run this for on the table if there is, I haven't looked at the Goblin Reclaimers unit, if there's a unit that's like riding a giant bomb or something. But if not, this would be a really cool idea for one of your bigger, I don't know, maybe artillery pieces, a Titan, something like that. It just looks really cool. Next, Randy Moeller gives us some nice, more of a grimdark look to it. So the previous ones were very bold and bright. This one's a little bit more subdued. The yellow trim on the red armor gives us a really nice contrast, and then you still have the green skin sticking out there. The base, nice job on the base. The crystals and everything look pretty good. So a nice solid paint job here. Mini painters. Okay, this one has really subtle but still very, very sharp contrast in the cloth. I mean, look at the way that the cloth fades from that darker gray to the lighter edge highlights, and look at the trim. The detail of painting those red triangles across the trim, that takes a lot of work. And you can see on the horn, we've got some non-metallic metal going on. So Mini Painters here has done a fantastic job. I'm going to say this is going to be one that's going to reach the winner's podium, if not get first. Of course, I haven't seen everything else, so who knows. Andre Partien. Wow, this one is super duper bright. Very, very bold. Especially when you add in that base with the super bright purple and the blue, and yet it doesn't necessarily look out of place. I mean, you've got orange, red, blue, purple. Usually these colors clash like crazy, but because we're doing goblins and orcs here, or, because of the aesthetic of the army, it actually looks really, really good. I imagine an entire army of these would be very, very eye-catching. Then on the other side here, we have something a little bit more traditional. Dolier has painted the same model, but more metallic. So you have the magenta crystals that are kind of bursting out to give it some color accent, but the rest is a lot of muted and washed down metals. But you still have the bright green skin in there as a nice accent right dead center. Dr. Zamph has submitted another one of our little I don't know what you call them, little like sniper guys who's hiding in the trees. So we've got the leaves covering him here. Nice. It's a good start. Everyone has to start somewhere. And for anyone who's never submitted to a painting competition, it can be quite intimidating putting your work out there for everybody to see. So kudos to anyone who goes through the time and effort to put something up. All right, Dreadval. Here we have very, very sharp contrasts. I mean, look at the red in the cloth there. You can see underneath, close where it reaches the yellow leaves there, very, very dark red, all the way down to that little bit of highlight on the tip. And then the skin, there's at least 3 colors that I can see in there. So very basic color scheme, which looks like we only got about 4 or 5 main colors, but the layering and the shade and the highlights were done really, really well. So nice job to Dreadball. Eric has given us a very close look at it. I like the fact that at the end of the gun, he's painted the purple. So to give it a look of either it's firing, the metal's heated, it's warped, something like that. It's those little details, like object source lighting or something like that, that really give models that extra bit of character. Eric53 has given us a goblin riding on a bike here. Nice bright yellows. We've gone with a different color scheme instead of the typical bright green. Lots and lots of metallic. George Dylan Prince. All right, we're going back to this mech, and he also has given us kind of a cross between some of the previous ones. So there's a lot of metal on here, and the colors are a little more subdued, but I love the attention that he's done to the crystals here. Like, they look very, very contrasting. You have deeper dark greens near the base, but then lighter near the top. They look very, very three-dimensional and see-through. That's really good. And then a mix of bright colors on the armor with metal on some of the plating. So all around, really, really nice job here. And Jaco Cipolla, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Very subdued, a lot of earth tones. We've gone away from a bright green for the skin or a bright yellow or something like that, and instead just kind of a tan color that almost blends in. But what's really impressive is even though the skin is a neutral color, the cloth is a neutral color, the biggest accent we have is the fuel tank on the weapon, the silver on the claws, and then maybe a little bit of the orange on the leaves. So this is a much more realistic look to it, and I think it still pulls it off nice. You can go with the more cartoony comic book orcs that are bright and shiny and colorful, whereas these ones look more like something you'd see in, like, I don't know, Jim Henson, like Dark Crystal kind of thing. Kai Tucker has given us a bit of a mix here. Nice bright banner. I love the chicken on top. That just sells it for everybody. It's also on a bit of a diorama. If you look on the top right there, there's this enormous rock outcropping that this tiny model stands on to really give it, some character. Because banners, I mean, they're supposed to be these standards. They're supposed to be one of the centerpieces of the army. So nice job here mixing muted colors with bright colors to give it some really good contrast. Then Lewis Cooper is giving us another dirt bike rider. I like how the goblin skin sticks out more than anything else. Everything else looks like it's grimy and dirty and dusty and used and worn, but the goblin itself is what draws your attention. And you can see just how much detail is given on the knuckles, on the feet there. The goggles, you can see there's a couple different layers of blue to give them the illusion of being curved by showing shadow and highlight. And even the teeth. Like, the individual teeth are painted, the cords on the ropes, so a lot of attention went into this one. Subscrub is giving us a nice diorama. I always appreciate those who put together dioramas. I'm not saying those who don't are lazy or something. It really adds to it when you can take the model and put it in a setting here. So Subscrub has given us, I think this is one of the, let's see. Oh, it's the same one as we've seen previously here. So he's got the blowpipe. I like how he's put some those polka dots to give it a little bit of an effect here. But good mix of muted colors and bright colors for some contrast. And as always, bonus points for situating it in a diorama or a background of sorts. Then Tiny Tavern Studio has given us some artillery. We got a little ballista going here, nice and simple, straightforward. Again, notice how just by putting that little piece of terrain in the background takes it from a single model just sitting, posing for a picture, to suddenly you have a scene. Like, this is an artillery piece set up in the ruins or set up in a castle defense or something like that. So, excellent job. Kudos to everybody who submitted to the individual category. Let's go take a look at the units. Moving on to the unit categories. First of all, we have Bobbit. Hopefully they're not cutting anything. So, very colorful. I like how they're going with a totally, I wouldn't say non-traditional, but we got yellow skin and green foliage around them instead of green skin and yellow, which is what we saw a lot of in the individual ones. But this is a really bright, really eye-catching unit here. And you can see the amount of detail and care that's been given to these models when you look at the goggles and the scopes on their weapons. I can see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potentially layers or colors of paint to give them that illusion of being this curved glass that's reflecting the light. So really nice job of using colors that sometimes can clash. Yellow, purple, magenta, but everything here pulls together really, really nice. Julian Rodriguez is giving us similar unit, but with a very different feel. So instead of trying to stick out with all kinds of bright colors, this one's super duper muted. So green skin, green foliage, leather. The one kind of accent, though, is the bright orange on the weapons. And there's just enough of it to give the unit some character, but not so much that it takes away or overpowers or something like that. So just cool study in contrast to see how two different people can take the same models and just by giving them different coats of paint can give them a very, very different feel. Moving on to David DeLeon. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that right. So once again, we got the unit of Goblin Reclaimers. This seems to be popular, although these guys aren't covered in the foliage and the moss. So these look like guys who've just been interrupted in the middle of working in a garage or something like that. So again, muted colors. Interesting that for the skin, we're going like Harry Potter Dobby theme here. So they look like not humanoids, but they don't have green or yellow or blue or some crazy skin color. Instead, it's a more neutral, natural, pale skin color. But then that makes the bases stick out more. You can see those colored tufts on the bases and the weapons. So the green highlights the yellow weapons, all that stuff. And then the blue goggles also really, really pop out that way. Kami, like Japanese kami. We got a much bigger unit here. I dig how this guy in the back, this looks like a football theme. So they've all got helmets. This guy's actually wearing a jersey. You can even see the number 3 on there. And it's just a nice overall aesthetic to it. Lots of color. It's not super popping like in your face, but at the same time, it's not super muted either. So there's a lot going on here that we can take a look. I love the bird sitting on top of this guy's head and the other one in the nest here. So very, very comedic army this is. I'll be curious if I can ever get someone on the channel with this army to play it out and see how it does on the tabletop. Ryan Glynn. All right, we're back to cartoony comic book, like strong colors, very sharp contrast with the green skin and the very yellow, reddish fall-colored leaves. Very striking, but at the same time, it does have this, like you could easily picture these guys as being commando-like. Nice job on the goggles, giving them a kind of glowy look to them. So really well done here. And Tim Opin. Again, going with a very unusual color for the skin. This guy's more the kind of a pale human flesh or Caucasian flesh, but then the purple here that's mixing in. So these almost look like Muppets. I'm almost picturing Gonzo. I don't mean that as an insult. Like the purple skin and the green hair is a very nice contrast. Looks good. I really dig what he's done on the bases here with the chunks of ruins, the rebar, the concrete, the sandbags. Bases give models so much character. If you're looking at your models and you don't think they look fantastic, if you think there's something missing, start putting some stuff on the base and you'll see it transform. For a long time, I never painted my bases because it wasn't that exciting. I didn't want to, and I was lazy. And when I started doing it, huge difference. Okay, so those are the units. Let's go take a look at what people have submitted for, I believe it's the legendaries. Okay, heading over to the legendary. This piece is absolutely fantastic. Look at the kind of the detail, the fading. It looks like a lot of dry brushing, definitely on the rocks, but a very realistic pose to it. So I believe this is Human Empire. This is the Earth Wizard, because you got the guy riding on top of the big boar there, but this is a really solid paint job. Very clean, nice highlights, good color scheme. So Zoltan Kondora, we've seen a lot of submissions from Zoltan here, and they all look fantastic. So excellent job on this. And there were only 2 submissions. So the other one here, Duckpocalypse, is giving us the exact opposite. So instead of a very realistic, muted, kind of subtle colors, here we have very bold, very bright colors, very contrasting. So you can like yellow tusks against the brown fur. And so 2 very different ways of approaching the exact same model. It's all about preference. Do you like the boldness and the sharp contrast, or do you like the subtlety? So to everybody who submitted, whether it's Titanic units, unit models, or individual models, congratulations to everyone who takes the time and effort to print, paint, photograph, and submit all within a single month. Nice job to everybody. Okay, so moving on to the first of our only 2 items of news or business. First up is Moonmire's Proving Grounds, the new mission pack, which is coming out for Age of Fantasy. Having played the Assault on Malhadra and having played at least part of the Void Sun threat, I can say these mission packs are a ton of fun. I really enjoyed all the ones for Assault on Malhadra. I think out of the 18 in there, I played 17 of them, and only 2 maybe did I think were actually not that great at all. And the rest went from, hey, this is not too bad, to this is a lot of fun. I'm only about 3 or 4 missions into the Void Sun thread. I haven't been quite as blown away as I was with Assault on Malhadra. There was one mission, and I think I've already posted it, where it seemed like what was supposed to make the level or that mission really, really exciting and different just didn't work at all. But the rest of them still, it adds something a little extra. So if you're getting really, really tired of the same maps, the same scenarios, the same objectives, and the same mission parameters in the advanced rulebook, I would highly recommend investing in one of these mission packs. It's 18 missions, all narratively driven. It looks like this one is going to be mostly the Beastmen and the Lust Demons. So 2 factions that we haven't seen a whole lot of attention to in any previous kind of campaign or anything like that. So they're cheap. I think they're like $5 or $10 because they're digital. And 18 missions. It's a lot of fun. And you don't have to play, having mentioned that, it looks like this is focused around Beastmen and Lust Demons. You don't have to play the missions with those factions. They're designed simply so that if you want to play the narrative campaign or the mission pack and follow along with this specific storyline, you go right ahead. But you can still play any of the missions with any kind of army as long as you follow the mission parameters. Now, the one thing I will be curious to see, and I've mentioned this as I've played more and more of these narrative missions, that what OPR does, it kind of shoots itself in the foot with some of these narrative missions. They set up an environment that adds a lot of fluff and dynamism to the level. So you're playing in the frozen north, so there's icy winds that can freeze and prevent your units from moving. Okay, that's something you have to consider when building and playing your list. Or you're playing in the middle of volcanic eruption, and so volcanic debris is striking all over the battlefield randomly and could hit your units. Like stuff that makes the mission fun. But then they turn around and they have war gear that allows you to completely negate it. So in the mission where you're playing in the frozen north, some of your units have winter coats, and so they are totally unaffected by the weather. Or you'll have, some kind of war gear, like early detection system, and every unit that has it can't be hit by the falling volcanic debris. And it's really kind of bugging me. If you're going to make a level, or why do I keep calling it a level? I play a lot of PC games. If you're going to make a mission that's centered around a specific scenario, environment, or narrative, make it centered around a specific environment or narrative. I think one of the biggest examples of this was one of the first missions I played in the Void Sun threat, where the whole mission is supposed to be rapid response. So every unit is supposed to either have fly, be an aircraft, or have a transport. Because the whole idea is both armies had to rush to the scene. And then, under war gear, it was like D3 plus 6 or D6 plus 3 units get teleporters. And at 2,000 points, that's pretty much your whole army. So I'm really hoping that for Moonmire's Proving Grounds here, that there isn't such an effort to undo everything that each mission tries to accomplish. So this will be releasing a bit later in November. It's not available yet. You can sign up to get notified, but it does say that the official campaign will launch in November. So for those of you who haven't, try it out. If you have tried it, the previous ones like I have, I am wholeheartedly going to try this because I think these were a lot of fun. And now on to the last item, which is, everyone knows what this one is going to be. The 3.5 beta is over. Version 3.5 of the game has officially been released. It was shown on the live stream a couple days ago, and everyone who has been even remotely participating knows how interesting this beta has been. At the start, you all remember rules were changing every day, then it cut back to just twice a week. Folks saw their armies go from being super overpowered to being completely nerfed and everything in between. This is probably one of the most dynamic periods of gaming I have ever seen. But the final decisions are out, the rulebooks are set in stone. I'm not going to go over them here because this is the month in review. We're just going to touch on some of the meta highlights to what the version 3.5 brings. But I am hoping probably for this week's midweek video to do what I did during the early days of the beta and to go over each army and take a look at least its army-wide special rule. So I did that in a couple previous videos, and those seem to be pretty popular. But we'll see, where did where the dice finally fall when it came to what armies are going to get what? Because I know some armies, for example, I played Tao Union, theirs didn't change that much at all. Whereas others like Havoc, that changed every week it seemed. And I would look at it one week and be like, this is the best special rule ever. Please don't change this. And it would be swapped out for something that I thought was absolutely terrible. And then it would go back to something great. I mean, it was like bipolar special rules. So we'll take a look at them. So look for that coming this week. Maybe I'll do a combined video of both Grimdark Future and and Age of Fantasy, or I'll do a shorter video one for each. But that's the plan. For now, looking at version 3.5, what didn't change? There was not a lot of change to the basic core rules of the game. The focus, as Tano said throughout this entire year, the focus was to make the armies more interesting. That the game as it was felt like every army was more or less the same with just different skins. So every army had basically the same kind of units, everyone shared the same kind of weapons, all special rules were more or less shared, but with a little bit of work, you could almost make 3 armies from 3 different army books be the exact same army. So the goal here was to give the game some flavor. Now, there is one thing that he mentioned in the summary, and you can read the summary on the website, but special rule names and aliases. One of the things that that was said here was there was a concern that there were too many versions of the exact same rule. So in the army builder, there would be, one rule that ignored regen, and then another army would have a rule that ignored regen, and then another army would have yet another rule with a different name, but also ignored regen. And so the goal here was to create universal special rules, such as the ones we're now all familiar with, like Unstoppable or Bane or Shred and stuff like that. And while I applaud that, absolutely, it does make the game straightforward, they didn't quite catch everything. So, for example, if you play Robot Legions, they have their army-wide rule is self-repair, which means when you take damage, for every damage you take, you roll a dice. On a 6+, you ignore that wound or that damage. If you mosey on over to either Plague Demons or Plague Havoc, their rule Plague-bound is whenever you take damage, roll a dice, and on a 6, you ignore it. So it's the very thing that they said they were trying to get rid of. Now, I understand partly the reason why you want to get rid of every rule having a different name, because that can get very confusing. As they said, new players get just overwhelmed with 50 different ways of saying 6-up, ignore wounds. But at the same time, if you bundle everything under universal rules, then the game will start to lose its flavor. Everything starts to sound the same, and if you make a change to one rule to affect one army, you're also affecting all the others. So we'll see if they found a nice balance here. So time will tell. Time will tell. Okay, now as far as the big changes, there's, I think, about 4 things that were changed. The goal, again, was to make each army feel different. So even if you went all infantry playing Battle Brothers, it was going to play very differently than all infantry Robot Legion or all infantry Jackals, or just to make the armies feel like the armies should. So one thing, all armies now have an army-wide rule. Those are the things that we all got to experience changing on a daily basis, or at least almost daily. But you get the point. So everybody has an army-wide rule, and we're going to take a look at what those were later in this week. Next, all armies got some special rules and weapons. So that way you can have combos, so you can start to stack things. So you can have an army that you take their army-wide rule and add a little bit more to it with this unit and their gear, and suddenly you have a specific unit in your army that acts a very narrative way that you would expect that army to act. So that makes it a whole lot more fun. And then the next item is that all armies, or at least all armies and most of the heroes in those armies, are going to have heroes that give auras. Now, it's not quite the same aura as we're used to if you played, for example, 40K, where the hero gives this buff to every unit within 9 inches, within 10 inches, within 12 inches. Instead, the rule often says this model and its unit. And I think this is a really fascinating, a really useful feature because it allows you to customize units even further. So you can take a unit of melee specialists and you can give them a hero that will make them faster, or give them a different hero that will make them hit harder, or give them a different hero that will make them more resilient. And so you can really decide what kind of an army you want to build. Do you want your melee-focused army to be just like charging bulls, completely heedless, they go barreling forward, and either you shoot them before they get to you or you're blown off the table? Or do you want to create a, like a brick wall? You create a melee unit that, yeah, they get in melee, but they don't hit hard. Instead, they're almost impossible to kill. So the more of variation like that, the more you can see, even within same factions, armies are going to look very, very different. And then the last thing, all armies now have more unique spell lists, which I really like. That's one of the things that I absolutely agree with. Previously, OnePageRules felt like everyone was playing the same. Whatever army you played, you had 6 spells. 3 of them were offensive, as in direct damage, and then 3 were buffs or curses, and they were all about the same. So as I've been playing a couple games since the beta has finally settled down and it's finalized, there are some very significant differences in psychic powers and magic. So some armies I think are going to have very, very strong magic, and some it's going to be more of a clutch or supplementary thing rather than building your army around the idea of super, super powerful psychers and magic users. So other than that, you can read more of the specific details. I'm not going to go through all of them here. Some units got some big buffs. Some units got some universal penalties. One I noticed specifically is the artillery rule. Now, artillery can't move, but it's +1 to shoot, which I'm very grateful for. I play a lot of armies with artillery, and the whole hitting on 4s, or in some cases hitting on 5s, made it not worth taking, which is too bad. Because when you have dwarves and you don't bring cannons and catapults and stuff like that, it doesn't feel like dwarves, whereas now it does. The undead and the demon army-wide rules were gotten rid of because, as it said on the website, it was too powerful for casual play, and it was also ruining competitive. It was just too much. The person who knew how to use them and used them well could ruin a casual game, and then when you got to competitive, everyone's going to use those armies because of how good those rules were. So they got rid of those. Everything else has had some subtle changes. We're all going to have to get used to the new names for special rules, so forgive me as I start going into the bat reps and filming things that I will frequently probably refer to stuff by its old name. But, c'est la vie. So that does it for the month of October. Few items, but those items were very, very big. So what do you guys think? How did you feel about the way that the 3.5 beta rolled out? Are you happy with the armies? Are you kind of bitter? Are you going to be changing who you play, picking up something new? Do you have kind of an old favorite that's now going to sit on the shelf? Let me know what you think. And then we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the army specifics later in the week. But until then, keep your dice on the table.